Welcome everybody to Dad's Drinking Bourbon. It is Sunday night. This is our first night of really having a live show in addition to the podcast we now have. So we have a podcast that's going to come out earlier in the week. It's going to introduce the whiskey that we're going to be drinking later on in the week. That is available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, all that fun stuff. Then here on Sunday night, we're going to have a little bit of a party. We might have some friends show up. We have two friends here tonight I'm going to introduce. But with me, as always, is Zeke Baker. Say hello, Zeke.
Hello.
Hello. And alongside Zeke is our friend Blake. Blake is here. He's been kind of having... This has been like your Bourbon Disneyland weekend, hasn't it been?
It's been the Bourbon Mecca this weekend. It's been awesome. Is this when you want me to talk about it?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and talk about it.
All right. So I flew down from Michigan yesterday, landed, checked into the hotel, hopped in the Uber, and I went down to visit Justin over at Carruthers. At Carruthers, I can't tell you enough about the bourbon community and the willingness and givingness and just openness of everybody that's in it. He opened up his doors, he opened up his liquor cabinet, and we sampled everything from his Bellmeads to a 1972 Dusty that was just to die for. It was phenomenal. From there, spent a lot of time really just talking and shooting the bull with him, and learned a lot. Justin, really appreciate the time that you spent. And then hopped in a car with one of the guys that was in the store, headed down to Spring Hill.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
And visited Tarak over at Elixir Spirits. Spent another 2 hours sampling stuff and taking home a few more store picks.
Tarak will do that to you. We've all been there.
Yeah. You got drunk. I mean, you didn't get
drunk.
But you got in a car with a guy you didn't know. Like, that's the craziest part.
I did. Now, Tarak and Justin both know him. They vouched for Chandler and said he was a good guy. So, Chandler, if you're listening, thank you for the ride, buddy. I'm sure that in my state we had quite the conversation. But anyway, so I had 4 hours of straight drinking store picks at the two shops. And I just packed up 6 bottles that I'm shipping home tomorrow. So... it's been, let's see, it was 3 Bellmeads and 3 Four Roses picks, so I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Chandler, I would have been a little bit more suspect, but Blake here is a very, very unassuming man. And then next to Blake, this is kind of capping off Blake's bourbon weekend, but next to Blake we have Josh Miller, otherwise known as the Moody Foodie. That you might find on Instagram, who is a food critic, and it's not a food blogger critic.
Yeah, I'll eat and have fun.
Yeah, eat and have fun. Eat, pray, love.
Yeah, this is close.
So it's not often we actually have a food person on the show, but I think it's interesting to see the way that you guys look at food opposed to how we see bourbon. It's going to be very interesting to have you do a blind tasting here tonight and kind of take your palate skills to the liquid form rather than the solid form, right?
Hopefully my palate skills are put to the test here and pass. And just like pairing that with food and seeing how those match up is kind of neat from my end.
Yeah. So how long have you been around? What do you normally do on that? Tell us a little bit about because now you're primarily on Instagram. You dabble on some blogs. You used to do a blog, but tell us a little bit about what you do on that and how people can find you and everything you have going on, because there's a lot of good stuff.
I'm the Moody Foodie with underscores in between the words there on Instagram and on Facebook. I have the website themoodyfoodie.co. I didn't have enough. Apparently, .com was a premium. And was $1,800, so I opted for the .co.
Wait, isn't it like $1.99 a year opposed to 99 cents a year?
No, or buying the domain. .co was $20, but .com was going to be like $1,800.
What?
And, wow. And I wasn't quite ready for. I didn't have the sponsors yet to cover that cost. And then, of course, do some blogging related to some of the different kind of restaurants or events and things that I attend and go to, but just like taking good pictures and having some fun over there.
What's the best experience you've ever had covering food?
Actually, a few weeks ago, I covered a James Beard celebrity chef tour. It was on the field for the Nashville Sounds. There was the chef from the Catbird Seat, Ryan Poley, actually put it on. His brother was the beverage director. They brought in chefs from around the country, and then some really great ones locally. For Henrietta Red and LaSalle and Nikki's Coal Fire, and it was just great. It was really neat, really fun. That was just an awesome experience.
For anybody that knows, I mean, we went to Southern Whiskey Society in August. There was a lot of, down in Franklin, the coolest thing about that event, I think it marries kind of the food thing with the whiskey thing. There were so many James Beard either nominated or James Beard winners that were there at that event cooking food alongside the bourbon and the whiskey. We're really excited to go to that next year again, because I think all the people there, super solid food. For people that don't know about cooking and what the James Beard Award is, it's like the Oscars of food awards, right?
Right, and what's just really neat when it's done very well is you taste the food once and you get its own thing, but then you pair it with a great, wine or, liquor, whatever, and then it kind of opens that up and you kind of try it and see it from a whole kind of new way and perspective. So the pairing really kind of can play and take kind of that dish or bite, I think, to another level.
And everybody wants us to talk about whiskey here in a second, but I think, bridging the gap, and I want to get what Zeke and Blake think about this too, and then we'll get back to this whiskey tasting. Do you think that that's something that is going to kind of be a new trend? Because I think people pair, wine and food previously, and I think you see a lot of people moving to pairing bourbon, and with the different finishes that are put on bourbon and all the other stuff that you can actually get there. Do you think that would be kind of a new wave of the future? There are whiskey sommeliers now. Where do you see that going? What? It's true. There's whiskey sommeliers. Just wait till I become one.
I just learned what that word meant, but 4 days ago, John, you were on the group thread.
Oh, you didn't.
Well, the bourbon can be just as complex as all different kinds of dishes, from pork to fish to beef or whatever. So I think from that end, an expert who really understands the palate and tastes can really pair and really make some great, I think, combinations for people.
So Blake, when you go out, do you normally pair? Do you have beer, wine?
I mostly beer when I go out. I struggled to pay the prices at the restaurants for the bourbon, so I'll pair IPAs with certain things, and I'll pair the stouts with various things. I think that we're going to see a new wave though, because everything's going to get paired. Everything's going to have new opportunities within the bourbon world, because this is great, right? What we're doing. Yeah. But what's the next step? There's got to be this.
We could be eating steak with all this.
Yep. There's got to be another level, and so I think the next level is going to be with food, and then I think it's that store pick thing.
Interesting. I
disagree completely.
No, yeah, I go the opposite way. I like to know what I'm tasting. I don't want it to be muddled, whatever. I got to dinner at a nice restaurant, order water. To some degree, like you said, I don't want to pay the prices when I know what I have at home and what I have invested in that. Then at the same time, if it's truly up to par, it doesn't need a pairing. All I need is water to cleanse and refresh what I've had before and to allow me to taste new again what's coming in. But I don't like, I really stray away from the pairings. I want to taste everything straight up. If I like a beer or a spirit, I like that. If I like a food, I like it. But
do you feel like the bourbon changes based on your palate and what you've eaten? So if you had something spicy, maybe a rye is not a good pair. So could it be based on what you've had that impacts?
Oh no, it can easily change.
Yeah.
But then if someone asks me, "What do you think about this?" Oh, I thought it was amazing. Well, I'd also had 3 spicy chicken quesadillas about an hour beforehand.
Right.
And you have it a day later, straight up, and
Well,
thank you.
Speaking of whiskey pairings, we are pairing whiskeys with whiskey tonight because Zeke and I are on we're on a mission to make you #rethink how you drink. And if you hadn't heard it earlier this week, I encourage you guys to go download it on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. You could go right to a link in our profile, and then you can actually listen to the podcast. But we talked about Peerless Rye this week. And if you know anything about us, we like to do blind tastings. And that's exactly what we're going to do tonight with our two friends. And we've opened it up. You know, on the podcast, we only did 3. Did we do 3 or 4?
Did 3.
We did 3 during the podcast. We are now opening it up to 5. We've switched some stuff out for a different reason. We're going to be talking about Kentucky Peerless again. It is a 2-year release from Kentucky Peerless Distilling Company up in Louisville. We are now putting it against, we did put it up against Barrel Rye earlier in this week. We are now putting in a Whistle Pig Rye. We are putting in a Thomas Handy Rye. And we are also putting in a Pennington Distilling Company Davidson Reserve Rye. The reason we did that is a local craft 3-year rye, which is very similar. You know, Peerless is a 2-year rye that's coming out from a somewhat craft distillery. So we wanted to have that comparison in there. Some of the people here have not had any of these. Some have had some of them. This is kind of continuing with Blake's Disneyland Bourbon Weekend. But we wanted to make sure that we had some things in here that were a little bit different. Some of the things that are a little the same. And really do a blind tasting and put it to the test. What do you think, Zeke?
I think it's a good lineup. We omitted the Michter's Barrel Strength Rye just simply because we wanted to change it up and have a fresh perspective. Also, its flavor profile wasn't exactly in line with Peerless. Not saying what we added may or may not be, but you know, it's fun to change it up, give some different perspectives. And again, you know, that's where we like to put things in the true scope of is just blinding it all, ranking it, and then going from there.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about this rye while we're getting going. Zeke's going to talk a little bit about it as well. While we're doing that, I am going to let these guys, and I should have given them a pen. Do you still have the pen over there? This is what happens when we do things live.
Yeah, sorry. We had a little bit of a madhouse between pours, chats,
guests,
pours, chats, and John trying to set up frantically while yelling at everyone to speak into the mic to get their levels set.
And nobody wanted to speak into the mics for me.
There is a comment on the 3-year Willet small batch being included. We talked about it, and we even almost did it on the podcast. Obviously, I'm usually a fan of anything Willet. It's just a different flavor profile. It's very rye forward, no matter the proof, and whether it's a blend of the high rye or lower rye yield. But it didn't flow with this, so that's why we really kept it out of it. We'll probably revisit it at some point.
But I think there was a big difference, right? And in that Willet 3-year, I think it's pretty safe to say that Kentucky Peerless is for me, it's better than the 3-year Willet. And I know,
well, it's a completely different mash bill, and its flavor profile is so different that, at least for John and I both, having had it multiple times before, it would be tough to throw in a blind simply because it would stand out and we would know it almost seemingly.
It would
regardless.
Be very easy for you and I to pick out a Willet, considering how many, we do drink Willet a lot. You more so than me. One of the good things about Zeke and I is, my wheelhouse is going to be more Buffalo Trace, Buffalo Trace, Heaven Hill, things like that. You are much more of the Willet, Brown Foreman, that type of thing, and that balances us out a little bit. But I think Zeke would have been able to figure out what the Willet was, and we wanted to kind of put it up against something else. I think we talked about putting it up against a Willet 5-year. We thought about putting it up against a Willet 9-year. One of the reasons we didn't put it up against a Willet 9-year is because that barrel 109 of the Willet 9-year it tastes so much like dill pickles. We could pick that that bottle out of anything.
And both of these guys got to experience that earlier, so I think they'll both chime in across the board that although it is a very amazing barrel and a great flavor, it is so unique. Blinding it doesn't even hide it by any means.
And that's something Blake had never, he mentioned, and I'm not trying to get him off of his tasting and giving notes, but he mentioned that was something that he's never had a whiskey that tasted like pickles before.
Not at all. Ever.
But if you haven't listened to our podcast from earlier in the week, we hope you do. A couple things we did want to reintroduce with this Peerless Rye. It's cask strength. It's non-chill filtered. It is only 2 years old. It comes off the still at 132 proof, but it is barrel proof at 107. That is what it is after the 2 years that's been put in there. It's not watered down. It's 61% rye, 8% barley, and 31% corn. And one of the interesting things about this, Zeke, and I know you have some more fun facts too, it is a sweet mash opposed to a sour mash. So what that means is when everything comes off the cookers, they completely drain out the cookers, they take everything out, they sanitize it, and they have to do a whole thing. They think it's more consistent after every run to do it that way, but also you have to do it that way. Blake's dying over here, by the way.
You nose and don't snort it. This is not an illegal substance.
But you
It's so damn good, though.
I know.
Gulp it down.
It's very good.
I'm saving some. I want to retry once I hear what they actually are.
But feel free to do that. But it is, they completely wash out the cooker after every run, which is not something that happens all the time.
Yeah, and I think part of that, from what I could find, it seems to be they have to do it with a sweet mash to simply keep bacteria from growing. Otherwise, the entire yield can be a waste. So what we could gather earlier on and kind of mentioned again was that for this Peerless release, there's 3 batches which predominantly hit the stores. They seem to have very unique profiles, which, I don't know, I guess it may go against the whole theory or premise behind the sweet mash concept of being more consistent. But from what we could find, it says that one profile should be a very fruit forward, the next is very tobacco forward, and the latter of the 3 expresses baking spice and molasses. That being said, there also are some single barrels that do exist. I've had some friends that had those, and literally they raved about them. I think that was before John and I really jumped on board and even fathomed getting a bottle. Just people that both of us take their opinion pretty highly. All said, look, I was at this or that event, I tried it, I immediately bought one. Granted, they were single barrels again,
but it's really good. I mean, that's the thing, is that we had people that told us, and we'll be very upfront with you, it's what we said during the podcast, the $120 price tag for Peerless is very daunting, and it's something that a lot of people look at and say, I don't know if I'm going to go spend that money. That was the biggest thing that we had against actually buying it. I think we had so many people that came back and said to us, yeah, I know, but...
And at the same time, the people that we had these opinions from got single barrels, which, to put in perspective, at least in my world, say you walk in the store and you get a Knob Creek off the shelf, or Four Roses off the shelf, or Eagle Rare off the shelf. Is it anywhere near what a store pick is?
Yeah.
Can I have my pen back?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Sorry.
John totally botched the question, but I know what his answer would have been is no.
No.
So the fact that there are single barrel variants out there, and depending on who you talk to, they may have had one. take that into perspective, especially if they paid the same price. I know most of us are used to paying the same price for a store pick and everything else, and that's very much a benefit to it. So in the same realm, if there's a single barrel of this product, it may be very, very much different from anything you or your friends have had if it is one of the 3 small batches variants that exist.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's something that when it is a single barrel, even within those single barrels, that's going to be a different taste profile within each one of those. So you guys have been, while Zeke and I have been talking here about the Peerless, you guys have been nosing, you've been tasting. There's no right or wrong answers here. You don't even have to guess on what it is. It's really just what we want to know is before you actually guess what it is, we want to know kind of what characteristics are you getting from any of these? Which one is your favorite? Which one do you like more than others? Somebody ripped out a piece of paper, and I don't know where the list is right now that I had.
I did it, and I gave it back to you.
Yeah, but I don't know why you had to rip out my paper, but I have Zeke's answer key somewhere. So Zeke, you for a second try to figure out which ones they had and referee that for a second.
How am I going to... Hold on. All right, so I'm figuring out what you guys had based on your notes. All right, this should be fun.
No. You're
You're up the creek with that one.
No. You're asking them which ones they liked more and asking them how to rank, what they ranked it 1 through 5, and then they will tell each other what they were. So you don't have to say what they are.
I'm still confused, but
okay. So never mind.
Fire away, starting in the far corner.
So Josh, you go first, and you tell me characteristics out of the 5 that you had. Maybe 10 seconds on each of them. What you got on the nose, on the palate, on the finish, and then kind of say which one you liked the most out of all of those.
All right. My number 1 I thought was a bit spicy. Really kind of, I thought, hit the nose right off the bat, but was still pretty smooth. The number 2, just, I don't know. There was something a little different about it. I just didn't quite care for the number 2. Number 3 was my favorite for sure. 4 I thought was just really good and smooth vanilla, and number 5 I thought was just kind of baseline. It didn't really jump out much one way or the other. And
any food context here? I only ask because John and I, we don't dive a whole lot into spice and other food contextual things other than like it reminded me of a s'mores or something. Mm-hmm. We're pretty basic, so I would just love to hear the perspective in that regards.
I mean, I got, I understand and would agree with your point as far as, letting the food stand on its own and, be its own thing. I always like when I do, sometimes pairing a bourbon with a steak. I find maybe those kind of, maybe go well together depending on, some of the other factors. But, so no, I'm just kind of interested to see what I ended up picking out here.
So did you just get a final ranking, which we'll ask later, but did you come up with one?
I can make one, yeah. Okay. 3 was my favorite. 5 was 2 or 5 probably was the low there.
So, like, what was his 3?
Excuse me?
Oh, he put it in his pocket for safekeeping.
That's what I thought you were going to do with it. Did you find Zeke's?
I did.
Okay, good. All right. Number 3 was Whistle Pig.
So Whistle Pig was your favorite.
Yeah.
What was number 2 and 5 were his least favorite?
2 was the Davidson, and 5 was the Peerless.
Interesting. So that is from a food critic right there. And then what was number 4 for him?
Handy.
So Handy was in the middle for you?
And probably number one was probably the second one.
That's
The barrel.
Yeah,
The
barrel.
barrel.
What was the full rundown? Sorry.
So the one he liked the best was the Whistle Pig. Then he liked
Whistle
the barrel.
Pig, barrel.
Then the Handy, and then
Handy.
uh,
I don't know, Peerless.
Pennington and Peerless were at the very.
Okay.
So he didn't like
It's a
the.
strange range.
Well, he did. I mean, if you think about it, he really didn't like the younger ryes.
I guess that's
were the
where it
ones.
kind of fell. Yeah.
You said barrel was the top, right?
Yeah, how?
4-year.
Barrel was
But it's a
number one.
4-year. But then Davidson and Peerless, it was 3 and 2. So
But barrel's 4, handy's at least 6, and the whistle pig's 10.
yeah, so he liked Whistle Pig the best. His youngest were at the bottom, and his oldest were at the top.
No, that
How are
definitely
you
makes sense.
confused?
And I do like. I mean, those types of. I tend to gravitate towards those kind of anyway, so that kind of made sense
Yeah, so
when I saw it play out.
he liked the older ryes the best, and he liked the younger ryes the least.
Okay.
So, Blake, you tell us a little bit about the ones you had. Which ones did you like the best? Which ones did you like the least? And then Josh will tell you, as he's crumpling up a paper, Josh will tell you what what they were.
Cover it up, I can see it. Okay, I'm going to start out with my number 4. I got spicy with fruit on the nose. It was fresh apples, and I wrote down the nose is quite fruity. For me, that was my third favorite. My favorite was number 5, which had a sweet nose, fruity. I said it was awesome. I got smells like candy. It was really oily on the mouthfeel, and I thought it was great. Then the next one was vanilla. Got some syrup with it. This is the one I think is actually barrel. It felt like let's see, I've had the barrel batch 11 on the bourbon side. It was a very similar oily mouthfeel. I could totally be wrong on that, but that's what it reminded me of. Then we had one with a really weak nose. It tasted like grass. It was really natural tasting. So I'm going to go with that being maybe the youngest one. Not a ton of spice on it. And then my last one was a younger, lower rye content, vanilla notes on the nose, but it just didn't really impress. So
which one did you like the best? Which one did you like the least?
my number 1 was my number 5.
Which was actually Whistle Pig.
So Whistle Pig. Now it's important we should mention this Whistle Pig is not a Canadian sourced rye. This is an MGP Whistle Pig. This is not a Canadian Whistle Pig. I know that will get some people upset. This Whistle Pig kind of comes in at $80. If you think about the prices of these things, Whistle Pig, Whistle Pig barrel are going to come in about $80. The Pennington is going to come in at about $60. The Peerless is going to come in at $120, and the Handy is probably going to be, what was the Handy retail, like $100?
It was late than that. I don't remember what it should charge me.
It was like $100 to $120 for the for retail for the Handy.
I mean, if I'm buying one based off of taste and price, I think I'm gonna probably go back to that Whistle Pig again.
Which is very, very interesting. I'm giving Zeke some time to nose and taste here.
Shot glass I got somehow.
Well,
That's all right. We still have some discovery to do for my list.
yeah.
Which
So-
one do you want to find
Oh,
out?
keep
about?
talking about the rest of the list.
Number 1. What's 2?
Yeah. Number 2 is number 3.
Number 3 was Peerless.
All right, so Peerless number 2.
That's the one that I said had a great mouth.
Oh,
Is that both of
2
them
more,
now?
bro.
That's because you put the heavy hitters here. I'm next, by the way.
They just broke Zeke's
If
furniture.
either one of them dropped, sorry, but
And
It is before people. It is not. It is a private pick 10-year Whistle Pig. It's not. It's the base 10-year, but it is a private pick. It wasn't necessarily a store pick. It's a private pick.
no, it never went to market. It was a private pick.
Rabbit Pig.
Sorry, but it is not Canadian. It's MGP.
I wasn't trying to edit this that much, and everybody's really trying to make me do a lot of work on this one.
At any rate, I do think it's a nice change of pace that both had the Whistle Pig at 1, whereas Peerless fell pretty far down here, but came in number 2.
What was your low? What was your last
one? Elaborate on the Peerless again, since it's such a drastic difference. I think it's fun to hear the different perspective and flavor.
Yeah. I mean, that ultimately gets us back to the other point, though, right? Everybody needs to do blind tastings on their own, because there are some things that one person is going to really like, some things another person isn't going to like. And that's the greatest thing about doing a blind tasting, is you're taking that bias out of it beforehand, and you're just kind of saying, what do I like better? What do I like the least? And then we'll get to it. We'll figure out what we do like the best.
Yeah, I said it was like maple syrup.
Was that the Peerless, or was that?
That was the Peerless.
Yeah.
Oily mouthfeel, nice overall sweetness to it. I don't remember from your show. I don't keep numbers very well. What's the rye content on the Peerless?
You're making me go back to an earlier page.
I didn't rip that one out.
It's 61% rye.
Okay.
No worry. It's 61% rye, 8% barley, and then it is 31% corn.
Okay. All right. So cool. My number 3 was my number 4.
That was Davidson.
So you like Davidson third. Now Davidson is interesting. It is a local pick out of Nashville, or a local distillery out of Nashville. It is 100 proof. It's 100% rye, which is the cool thing about that. It's pot. I'm getting so close here. It's pot distilled. It is 100% rye, and it is a 3-year rye single barrel out of Pennington Distillery in the Nations in Nashville, Tennessee. The interesting thing about this one is that I actually got to taste this with Tarak from Elixir Spirits. We put 3 of the barrels side by side. We liked this one just because of the notes that it had on it. It was a little bit different than the other ones that were there. But there were 3 different barrels that they were releasing that night, and I was lucky enough to be able to taste them with him. So I am probably, the more that we go through this, I am probably not going to get to taste. But it's okay, because I have the 3 of you, and I can.
You didn't taste any of these?
I'm busy doing.
Well, go ahead, taste some. I'm working on mine. And have you gone through the whole list yet?
We got a couple more to go still.
All right.
Drink, baby.
Number 1, I said, was younger, lower rye content, vanilla notes. It was number 4.
Number
1.
Number 1 is barrel rye.
So,
what were the notes again? No, this is fun.
I said that it was younger, lower rye content, had some vanilla notes on the nose.
No, that's spot on.
Yep.
It's a blend of 2 ryes, one of which is 51% rye, 49% barley. Then it says mixed with a Tennessee rye, which that's either Jack Daniels or Dickel, which Dickel is still MGP. They just bring it back and charcoal filter it, age it, still MGP. But there's no, I guess, information given as to where the ratio is. But if you take the 51 to 49 and say it's seemingly cut with a decent amount of Dickel rye, where the barley should drop to me, I found mid palate to finish between the Peerless and the barrel almost identical. I really did.
Cool.
When we did them blind earlier in the week, the noses were different, but mid palate to finish, I thought they were spot on. Just like I couldn't tell the difference.
Now, we do have a question from the audience. Is doing 120 proof, having one of those, and then going and having something that's lower proof, is that skewing our results at all? We do make sure that we have water here. In a true tasting, we would probably have some crackers too to cleanse the palate.
Well,
it is
cask,
not.
Isn't it?
It's not perfect. What?
And everything cask.
No, not every. Davidson is 100. Peerless is 107. what is that Whistle Pig that
Was
you
that a
had?
Monty question?
It's 120. I mean, nothing climbs that high. I'd say 100 to 120. You're not really dealing with extraordinarily high. I mean, it's not Stag Junior. It's not Elijah Craig barrel proof. It's not something that's going to send you to where your whole mouth puckers up. And at the same time, it's not an 86 proofer that no matter how good it is, if you've had one of these, your taste buds are just shot. Yes, you should keep it in the same realm, and or as John said, really drink a lot of water. But all these pours, you're looking at a quarter to a half ounce. It's nothing deep, and by no means one or two fingers. It's a tasting. There is a difference than going and I'll have a pour of this or that. All you really need is a nip of the nose, one or two splashes on the palate, and you know what you're working with for the most part.
Yep. So I guess to say that this is truly a blind test, Handy was my number 5.
Which is, there you go.
That's the one that I said. It tasted grassy. There was a really natural earthiness to it that just did not. It just didn't do it for me. So that's where I stand. So 1-5. So Whistle Pig 1. 3 was Peerless, so that was my number 2. Davidson was my 3rd, so I'm gonna have to go back and try that one. And then Barrel, and then Handy.
So it must be it's interesting for me that we had that Will at 109 before we got on here, because I'm just tasting pickles on everything. So I'm having trouble because everything I'm tasting, I'm just like, wow, this tastes like pickles. I didn't think this tasted like pickles earlier. But Zeke, I'll go through this a little bit. My note on the first one I had was pickles. My note on my second one I had was pickles. No, the first one was pickles. It had some natural grass. It was, a little bit astringent, and that grassy. It's not like, when I say grass, it's not like a cut your lawn grass. It's like, it's just kind of, it's floral, but not in a flowery. It is
like more almost not earthy, but
yeah, it's not earthy, but it's kind of like it
natural.
Smells like you're outside.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're in Grandpappy's meadow, and there's.
Is that your Handy?
No, so I don't know. Number 2, I did get a little bit of pickle on that. Number 4 was very, but number 4 was very vanilla for me. 5 was very, very refreshing. I want to go back to number 3 again. It might be for me. No, 3 was not. 3 I think was. I thought 4 was Barrel. I thought 4 was Barrel. I probably liked 5 the best. I would go 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 4, 3. Just to speed this up a little bit.
5 was the Whistle Pig.
Okay.
What was next?
I said 5, 1, 2, 4, 3.
1 was Peerless.
Okay.
What's next?
2.
Davidson.
And then 4.
Barrel.
And then 3.
Oh, your favorite, buddy, the old Handy.
So Blake, I was with you. I did. We had Whistle Pig number 1. We had Peerless as number 2. We had Handy is the last, right? Davidson was both 3 for. But I think that I think what I get from that, and if there are things that I'm taking and from all of this, is that if we have if we have a craft distillery here in Nashville, Tennessee, that is putting stuff out at $60, and a bottle of the Davidson Reserve Rye is $60, that is coming in and it's beating out. I mean, at least for me, that's beating out Handy. The Peerless at $120 versus, and I kind of want to do a side by side of that Peerless and the Davidson because that is the most interesting thing to me, that those are, kind of right, the Davidson is half the price of the Peerless. I think the Peerless is very, very, very good. I think Zeke kind of threw a wild card at us because that Whistle Pig is not just your regular pick of Whistle Pig. That is coming from somebody in the bourbon community that we trust that went and did a private pick on that. So that is an extra special Whistle Pig. That's just
and even then, 2 picks came out of that, and coming into it, I was told that they were both rye, but they were by no means identical, even MGP. And the other bottle, which I didn't bring, it's similar to the 109 Willet. It's pickles forward. Obviously, MGP has a plethora of mash bills, juice, and options available for the best non-labeled company, distiller, whatever you want to call it. I mean, how many people are they really supporting? I mean, shit. Hey, it happens.
He just wants me to put that explicit thing on our podcast.
All right, anyway, I'm not going to rank these, but I want to know what this order was.
So you tell me, well, you rank them first. You tell me what you...
I'm not ranking that. I just want to know if I got these right.
Okay.
I got 1 as the Handy.
Correct.
2 is Whistle Pig.
Correct.
3 is Barrel.
Wrong.
4 is Peerless.
Wrong.
5 is Davidson.
You have the Peerless and the Barrel mixed up like you did before.
I know.
And that's what we did when we did the podcast together. Those two are very, very close, and they're very, very tough to figure out. If you were going to rank those, I mean, what I wanted to get was your pure unbiased ranking before you actually picked or knew what they were. But what do you actually think these are now?
Ranking wise, I can tell you at the bottom, I still am not a fan of the Handy. For whatever reason, Davidson was somewhat tough to me on this one. I don't know. Some part of it was tough. It could have been not having enough water.
So you probably put Peerless up a little bit higher than you did the other night.
I have a really hard time discerning the difference between Barrel and Peerless.
But which one? So you probably, if I were guessing your ranking, you're going to go Whistle Pig, and then the Barrel and Peerless are interchangeable, then the Davidson, then the Handy.
That would be correct.
So let's talk about that, guys, for a minute, because we have a couple minutes. We don't have a whole bunch of time, but we have a few minutes. We have about 15 minutes left. Zeke and I wanted to talk about a glass. We might push that. We would love to talk about the Cradle glass. I think it's interesting. We can introduce it, but we're having a good conversation with a couple of guests. How do you feel about $120 rye or just $120 whiskey coming out? I mean, Josh, you kind of dabble in it on the side. Blake, you're more hardcore on the bourbon. How do you guys feel as from the casual fan and then the real big bourbon fan? And Blake, I know you're newer to it as well, right? But you're in. You dove in with 2 feet, 2 arms,
4 credit cards.
But how do you guys feel about something coming out at $120 in 3? It's a 2-year rye. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that, right?
Yeah,
there is. I mean, I want to know that that's worth the price for the investment there. But I think it's real interesting to kind of strip it all down to just the drink in the glass and evaluate it kind of that way, and not based off of marketing, bottle, distiller, those kinds of things.
And it's kind of, if you think about what Peerless does, they put a lower entry proof into the barrel. Mm-hmm. So when it goes into the barrel at 107, it actually costs them more because they have to have more barrels to house everything. They're going to have less evaporation that way, but they have more barrels. They're going to have more overhead. Each one of those barrels is taxed. So the more barrels they have, the more taxes they're paying. the more cost it takes. And I think people don't really take capitalism into this as much as as much as they should. And if you think about, Josh and I both lived in Lexington together, and we both worked in radio and back in the day. And one of the things that I did for that radio station was the Horse Racing Radio Network, and it's like horse racing. People don't understand. They think horse racing is going to the track, and they think horse racing is just that race during the day. They don't realize that horse racing is really more about the breeding, and that's where all the money is. So racing is a means to an end, and everything that goes into it is more planned out to say.
So even if you grasp that, and sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We're slim on time, but it is a really good.
We're not
product.
too slim. We got 10 minutes. We're good.
It is a really good product. It's really enjoyable, but obviously for a competitor that's seemingly what we all found to be almost identical in nose and palate at $40 less. Okay, one sources, so they're probably not making as much money. The other did it the hard way, they're doing a different mash, etc. This very old factory method. But if people are buying it at this price point, who's to say once they go from the red to the black, is it selling a drop? Or are they going to say, no, folks been buying this shit hand over foot for 2 years. Who cares if we're finally making more money? They're paying for it. Let's keep going. That's where I worry.
And that was Zeke's point, right? Is if this comes out as a 2-year rye, Peerless is planning on having a 4-year bourbon come out. What is that 4-year bourbon going to cost? If they're doing the same thing that they're doing before. But, my whole point and the horse racing analogy is that really it's because they're spending that money. Some of the things that go into, say, the stud fee, when it's $100,000 for a stud fee, that is because of the work that they're doing. They're paying for the trainer, they're paying for the barn, they're paying for all of the overhead that goes into that to eventually get that product. That is kind of Peerless's argument, is that we are spending the money going into this, making a different, we're making a different mash, we're putting it in at a different proof for you.
It makes sense, but once you go from red to black, is there something going to be a discount? Like, can we take all these empty bottles and change them in? I got 8 empties. I need a $45 discount.
So Blake, what do you think about that?
We get 10 cents a beer bottle, to recycle.
No, I'm just saying.
But
I get it. And if you're coming into the marketplace at this entry point, you really are cutting yourself off from consumers. It's like Walmart, Amazon, whatever. I mean, you have loss leaders in every part of revenue.
Right.
You take a hit for the longevity. At 120, you're not taking a hit for longevity. You're giving the finger to the majority of people that aren't going to pay for a bottle.
So Zeke, your point is you think that they should have done a longer play. So they didn't really look at, and I don't know what their books are.
I don't say it's an age play. I say it's a better price point play.
No, but I'm saying so an age, like, where's their ROI? And I don't want to get too dorky on here, but if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, where's their ROI? They probably have projections of what they're going to sell and where they would get, as you were saying, from the red to the black.
Exactly, but if going in, you're not going to source. You're doing your own thing. You have to have the financial means in place to do that, and people that have the faith in you for that. You don't suddenly punt the ball at 4th and 1 from the 20 when you're trying to score with 10 seconds left.
Yeah. But that being said, I think that there's something to be said about, you think Four Roses now put their limited edition small batch out at $130. You have Kentucky Owl coming out at $130. You had Al Young coming out at $130 to $150 depending on where you got it. Is the price, is this on point with where the prices are moving forward, or is the market going to have to correct? Like in capitalism, the market's just going to have to stay away from this stuff. But would anybody ever stay away from going and buying something, in retail if they can, avoiding secondary?
Well, at the same time, all right, so the other labels you mentioned, Four Roses. very established. Kentucky
That's going
Ale,
to be my point. Yeah.
very hyped, getting more and more established.
Well, I mean, if you think about what Kentucky Owl Park is going to be,
but still,
the backing of
this is an
Constellation
up and
Brands.
comer. I mean, you want to bring people in. Say
You come in low, get people on board.
You take a
and
hit
then
on every bottle the first year. The fact you're not sourcing, you know you're in the red. Get people hooked. They'll keep buying over and over and over. Whereas you see a sticker, I mean, you said you were a truck. I'm sure he poured that for you.
Yeah.
You said, "Dan, this is amazing." And he said, "How much is it?" I'll take that Four Roses pick.
I didn't even look at pricing until, and honestly, my credit card got declined when we were there.
But
That was a
it was
fraud
purely over
That was
fraud protection.
That was fraud protection, I promise. So I got a couple of things here, and my main point here was taken that that Four Roses, and I don't know who the other one was that we just had discussed. They're established. Peerless is brand new. They're growing. I'm okay paying $60. I'm okay paying $75 for a new company to get up and running. But when it comes to the first year, the first opportunity, and they were putting out a $120 bottle, you're pricing a heck of a lot of people out of the market.
Yeah, I mean, America loves to support local, even if it's not local. We all love it. Like that's a trend now.
So Nate in the comments actually did some. He said something. There's 2 points that. I think we equate everything to Four Roses store picks, whether or not it's rye or whether or not, or we're going to equate things to Michter's Barrel Proof or Pikesville or something like that. So I think, I kind of look at that and say, I could go get 3 Pikesville or I could get 2 Michter's Barrel Proof and spend that same amount of money. My mom told me one time when I first became a manager, she told me, you can always loosen, but you can never tighten up. And Nate brought that up, but the same thing, if you have a staff and you have people that are reporting to you, it's a lot easier to loosen the reins than it is to tighten the reins after you've been a little bit lax before.
Yeah.
Same thing is going to happen here with price, right? If they came in, look at what happened with Booker's. Look at what happens with some of these things.
Makers, they talked about we're going to cut it.
Well, they were going to cut
couple of proofs.
Yeah. So when you do something like that, so say Peerless comes in at 120, and they do get to the red, or they do get out of the red, and then they drop it down to 100. Say they were to do that, it's a lot easier to do that. They're not going to do it because if people were buying it for 120, they're going to keep it there. But you're never going to be able to get to that 120 price point if you're them. I'm not saying I love it. I'm saying from a business point of view and from a strategy point of view, I get it. I'd probably do something similar to it. But
as a consumer, I also avoid that product.
That's what I want to know.
I'm not going to notice that it's $100 versus the $120. I'm going to remember you came out at $120. It's out of my market, and I'm just never going to look at it again.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to take this back to the real bourbon whiskey side of things. Am I going to buy a Parker's 11 that's $135, $140
when it's amazing.
When I could buy a McKenna for $35.
Which
is it $100 better?
Well, no, that's why we love all this, obviously.
Yep, and
that's why we love doing the blind side by side.
And I'll say I have bought 3 Parkers. I've traded 2, and I've got 1 waiting for me to buy. So that doesn't mean
we all spend money on bottles, but again, it just circles back to look. You're young, you're getting your toes wet. Don't scare anybody off. Even if you're still losing a little bit or hedging, so gain a following. We're all here for the long haul. I mean, we've all got at least 40 years of drinking left behind us. And how many bottles is that over time?
I hope I do.
I'm hedging 40.
Okay.
I go for the under. I like to exceed, not underperform.
Uh-huh.
So with the last 5 minutes we have left, right? Go across the room. I think I know what Josh's answer is compared, where it was on his, on his list. But would you buy Peerless at 120? Yes or no?
I would not.
Blake, would you buy it at 120? Yes or no?
I would not.
Zeke, would you buy it at 120? Yes or no? Well, I bought it at 120, which is why we have it here. So there,
That's market research.
It is. You gotta spend money to make money, right? And
but you don't know until you know.
Yeah,
it really is it's an amazing product, especially in the realm of 2 years. I don't know where else you're going to find something that good. It's a 2-year product. Again, we're all drinkers. We're not here for whistles and pigs or something. Sorry, I was going to say them off color, but I was afraid.
Well, no, but I'll be the first to tell
I was
you.
going for off color, but at any rate, it's a 2-year product, but it's good. But still, just build a following. Let us buy your product and enjoy it for as long as we can or want to.
Yeah.
Just don't rub it harsh to begin with.
On that note, I'm just gonna say that my problem is that curiosity always kills the cat with me. I'm gonna want, if I don't have access to go to a bar and get it, if I don't have, and that's ultimately what we want to talk about is it worth going and spend your money on it? I think I get curious more so than Zeke. Zeke is very established, and he will try. You'll try something before you go buy it. Because of what you have access to, or you'll go get a sample from somebody, or you will, I'll go dive in.
John, I ask people. It's simple.
Yeah. But I don't. I just go buy it. I'm like, hey, I saw it out.
I saw this whistle pig that was finished in white wine. It's 82 proof. I think it's going to be really good.
I never say something that's 82 proof is going to be good.
But, John, do you think the better question instead of would you buy it is would you buy it again?
I like it. I don't think I could spend $120 on it again.
No one did not like it. And that, across the board and across lots of boards, and we all conversate with plenty of people, no one has said this isn't bad. It's really good. It's just you're a young brand, and you're a brand. You want to hook people. Hook us in at 70. I mean, even that's somewhat high, but hook it there.
Fair
a little
point.
bit.
You could even get 80. You could even get 80. I think that's one of the things that
hook people right there, and you've got a brand following for life. I mean,
and
everyone in whiskey, bourbon, whatever is loyal.
We'll come back on again. Zeke's very fired up, but we're running out of time here. So in the last minute, Josh, where can everybody find you on Instagram?
The Moody Foodie. Go follow. Good stuff.
It's the_Moody_Foodie. Blake, where can everybody find you on Instagram?
You can find me at bourbon.cbj.sparty.
If you can remember all that. Just lots of periods. Lots of underscores and periods in this group. Zeke, where can they find us now that we have a podcast? Where can they find us?
Well, they can find us probably on the back porch of this house with some cigars and more bourbon very quickly if John can get lighting and whatever set up.
But they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. They can find us on Stitcher. You can find us on Instagram at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. You can find us on Facebook at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Find us on Twitter at Bourbon Dads. You can find me personally on Facebook or on Instagram at suburban_dad, SUBOURBON_dad. Thank you guys very much for spending time with us. Zeke obviously has had too much to drink. So
I spent a weekend with in-laws and I was cut off. I had too much. I'm at like 20%. I'm just getting wound back up.
We did the live ended, guys. But we are just wrapping up. Thank you very, very much for spending time with us. We really appreciate it. Blake, thank you very much for coming down. Josh, thanks for coming over.
Oh, thanks for having
we
me.
hope it's not the last time you come over.
I'll be back. Yeah.
But everybody make sure you go follow us. Give us a 5-star review. Make sure you put in a review there. That's what keeps us going. And thank you very, very much for joining. Zeke and I will see you later on this week. Cheers.
Ciao.
See ya.
Rethink how you drink. #.